has such a, can you all hear me? Okay, I don't have such a big voice anymore. It's one of the things that are leaving. So if you need to move up, if you can't hear me, please come up because I can't do much more than this. That was such a signature song for Swamiji. I mean, one of his earlier pieces. And the topic today is spirituality in the New Age, I believe. Is that what? Yeah. And Swamiji was Swami Kriyananda was such a harbinger of this. I mean, he really burst onto this scene with Yogananda, as you all know. I mean, he just, at the age of 22, was just full out. He read it, he got it, he lived it, and he lived it every moment of his life. Somebody was asking me in the car today if I could just tell a story about Swamiji, and of course, one story, they said, doesn't matter what the story was that I told, but one of the amazing things about being around him, and I just want to be clear with everyone, I went to Ananda for the first time right at the new year of 1980. And I was just instantly on that path because I had already been, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm telling you, I had no idea. I didn't understand. It wasn't like the stories you hear. I was looking, I was searching, I couldn't wait, then I found Ananda and I went there. I did not have an experience like that. I was picked up from where I was in Southern California. I was moved up to Northern California, and that's my whole story. I mean, literally, Master just came to me, got me, and moved me, and I was absolutely clueless. But I did find Ananda right away because, of course, that was the whole purpose of Master moving me there. He knew the whole master plan. I did not. And Ananda was just moving down onto what we call the peninsula, Palo Alto, Mountain View, the area where we are now. And I just immediately got involved. We, right around that time, bought a little used bookstore that's become the East-West bookstore. Perhaps some of you have heard of it. We have a big version of it in Mountain View. Then one opened in Seattle. Then there's bookstores in Portland. It just became, it was the manifestation of yet another of the many wonderful dreams, visions that Swamiji had. They were all made manifest. But through that bookstore, I walked in one day, and there were a couple of very Jewish young men, Prahlad and Danny. They've since, both of them left Ananda for various reasons. But to be honest, culturally, and they just resonated with me and me with them, and they took me under their wing, and I was just on this path. So I was on the path from about 1980 on, very involved in Ananda as it opened on the peninsula, but not very involved with Swamiji. So what I'm trying to be clear about is I was not one of those people that we hear about all the time who was always with Swami, but I was with him a lot. I didn't miss spiritual renewal weeks or any time he was talking. He came to us frequently. And then over the years, his and my relationship changed dramatically, I would say. He knew, of course he knew the whole time, but certainly long before I knew his plan for me, that I would take on a lot of the responsibility that I've ultimately taken on. But he knew it right away, and in just the most beautiful way, he sort of carried me until I was ready to step in. And then, interestingly, he didn't tell me anything but he wrote a note to Asha. It's time for you to sort of go on the road and start doing your thing. Shanti's there. She can take over everything. That's what he told Asha. Asha never told me. I mean, it's just this whole thing. But I did. And then from then on, I particularly saw him a lot. So I was watching Swamiji and close with Swamiji, though not one of that smaller group of people. Never, ever, once, ever did I see Swamiji giving a talk, sitting in his home for dinner, traveling out for dinner with us, didn't matter what the situation was. I never once saw him be anything other than uplifting, expansive, positive. We were talking about him in the car today, and I said he could tell you some very difficult news, like you are totally out of line, and yet you just felt loved. You knew it was the truth. And so when he said one day to an entire group of about 18 or 20 people having dinner at his home, looking across the table at my husband and I, and he said, you know, Shanti and Barry, just like this, absolutely apropos of nothing, had nothing to do with what we were talking about. They can make it someday, but they really have a lot of ego. And you know, everybody around the table, their forks were like this, and everybody just sort of went, you know. It was a very unusual moment because it was such a, I mean, what could be considered an incredibly critical moment. This was a table of, none of us knew each other. Basically, it was a group of people who had donated to a certain project. So you gave a certain amount, you had dinner with Swamiji. But you know, it didn't bother me one bit, which is amazing because he was talking about a human being with a lot of ego. So if you have a lot of ego, you would think that would bother you. But it didn't bother me because, I mean, I didn't know this at the time. I didn't even think about it. But Swamiji had a way of sharing energy that was so true, that was just steeped in truth. And truth is love. And you know, you couldn't have told me those words then, but it was just right. I knew it was right, though I didn't think about it. It wasn't like, gee, let me think about that. You know, he's right, I better work on my ego. No, not at all. I was too egoic. But that's what happened with him. And I'm saying all of this because he has been one of the great beings of all times who has ushered in what we would talk about today, which is spirituality in the New Age. And when you listen to the words of this song, walk like a man even though you walk alone, why court approval once your road is known, and all of the other verses, Swamiji is saying, tune in, listen to your heart, find the truth. And when you know something is the truth, go with it. Just go with it, because he doesn't say this all in the song, of course. It took him 150 books to keep saying it and saying it and saying it to us. When you know something is the truth, it means that you are moving more intuitively than rationally. And there's a lot I will say about this age that we all find ourselves in. But one thing is for sure, that is that part of what Master came to show us, of the many things, and we'll talk about them, is that we have to move away from all of the reason, all of the rational way of thinking of things, all of the desperate need for scientific proof of everything. We need to not become stupid. I mean, I have to remind people often, and this is important. All of you know I'm a physician, and I went to medical school and trained at Stanford University. Now, that may not mean as much in Australia. I don't know what you know about universities, but it happens to be one of the best medical schools in the world. And it's incredibly scientific. I mean, it's filled with a big bunch of scientists who want to prove everything. So I'm trained as a scientist in the deepest way. But we can't just stop and only be looking at science and at the tests that are done and all of the rational approach. I mean, we all know this. Einstein and many, many other great scientists and beings, everybody knows this story. He comes to the conclusion that E equals mc squared, which changed everything about our knowledge of the whole universe. And then it takes him 10 years to scientifically prove it. And there are so many statements that he made about how intuition has to come first in terms of any wisdom in the world. But not just him. There's a wonderful book, people of Palo Alto have heard this a lot, written by a man whose last name is Abel, A-B-E-L-L, and it's called Conversations with Great Composers, I think. And this man sat down now at least 100 years ago. Is that right? No, maybe 75. My dates could be off because I don't remember exactly when Brahms or Beethoven or a slew of other musicians died. But he sat and he talked to them. He talked with Brahms, he talked with Beethoven. Brahms said to him, I'll talk with you, but you cannot publish this book until 50 years after I die. Why did he say that? And Abel lived up to that because he did not want his words to be scrutinized. He didn't say this, but it's what I think. He didn't want his words to be scrutinized by the rational, solid minds of his time. He knew that 50 years after he died, we'd be in Dwapara Yuga. He didn't say to Abel, wait till you're in Dwapara and wait till you're so many years into it. But he said, don't publish the book, waiting for that time where he could say to Abel, I don't write this music, I hear this music, it's given to me. Beethoven told him the same thing. I've never written anything great, I hear it. When somebody once complained about one of Beethoven's piano concertos, he screamed, I'm not going to do it now, he screamed, that music was given to me by God himself. Do you think I care that it's hard for you to play? They were asking him to change the music so that they could more easily play it. Now, I also just read something. I used to quote this probably 40 years ago, and I'd never seen it, but somehow I just jumped on this collection of Ananda writings, and there it was. So just literally 3 minutes ago. So I still won't get it exactly right. But in about 1890, the man who was in charge of the patent office went to the president of the United States and said, we should just close the patent office. Everything that could ever possibly be discovered is already discovered. That's how they were thinking then. Imagine, that's written in history books in 1890. Think about what's happened since 1890. Think about what's happened in your lifetime. I mean, we are in a period of such movement and change and flux. And, of course, into this change and movement and flux comes Paramahansa Yogananda. Not by any accident. We all know this, but it's so profoundly meaningful to our path. It's so profoundly meaningful to the effort that we will put into our practice, to listening to the words of this song and really taking them to heart. We are a part of a revolutionary movement that's bigger than almost anybody in the world can fathom, outside of those few of us, not just us on this path, but certainly all of us on this path, but people who are beginning to realize that what we learn that's of major import, what we know for sure that's of major import, comes when we can open our heart and follow our intuition. This is so important. You know, 3 years ago now, about 3 years ago, and 4 years ago, I was in Israel. So I went January of 2019, and I went back in January of 2020. And during those trips, I met some, we all did. First I went alone with Asha, and she and I went to a little town, one of the oldest cities in Israel, probably in the world, called Tzfat. And it's a little cobblestone, hilly town that's filled with artists. And most of those artists also happen to be rabbis. They don't tell you that when you walk in. And furthermore, you get to be a rabbi in a different way. In Israel, there's a lot of rabbis. But nonetheless, lovely, lovely people. So when we were going back a year later and taking 30 people with us, we went as a pilgrimage, I said to Rami, our group leader, we need to find one of those rabbis because they were studying not traditional Judaism, which I grew up with, and I was a practicing Jew for the first 20 years of my life till I became disillusioned, hearing the phrase over and over that the Jews were God's chosen people. And then you ask yourself, how could the God that I'm falling in love with have a chosen people? It's impossible. The rabbis didn't want to hear that. Anyway, I left, and I began this search, which was a good thing. So over there, though, in Tzfat, most of those rabbis are studying and teaching the Kabbalah, which is mystical Judaism. And it is exactly our teachings. Exactly. Now, subsequent to that, we've co-taught some courses with those rabbis online. It's been wonderful, actually. We haven't done it for a while, but we did during the pandemic. I asked one of those rabbis when we were doing one of these talks, which was being zoomed out to the world, let me ask you a question. I said, I was born and raised Jewish. I was very involved in Judaism. I loved it. I lived at the synagogue, almost literally. I never heard about the Kabbalah. How could that be? And he stopped and he said, the world wasn't ready for it yet. Isn't that interesting? He didn't say we had to wait for Dwapara Yuga. I don't even know if he knows that word. Doesn't matter. But he said the world hasn't been ready for it. So here we are, ready for it. And we call it Dwapara. You know, the Greeks called it whatever it would correlate to, the Golden Age. Everybody has a word for it. But everybody has a word for it, whatever it is, because we keep shifting from one way of perceiving things to another. And what has happened in our lives that is so perfect is that, okay, I'm sorry, I better put this on. No, I can't, 3 o'clock. I don't want to keep us over, but I have no way of following time. My watch broke this morning. Anyway, of course that's going to go off too. The fact that right in this shift between Kali Yuga, fixed, dualistic form, everything that we all know, in the middle of this shift into Dwapara Yuga, formless, energy, unitive, all of what we know. But we know it, and we go, yeah, of course, we know it. But it's so recent. It's just 1900. Master came over here 1920. It's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. And the fact that each of us, everybody in this room, has been chosen by Master, found by him, I would say, to be back on this path is such a remarkable gift for us. And we can't ever overstate that, because Master himself says, I don't have his exact words now, but he said this. He said, if you've been drawn onto this path, you have a responsibility. That's the word he used, his word, not mine. A responsibility to show up and live the teachings. If this is your path, if he's come to you and helped you here, you have a responsibility. This is what he said. It wasn't even like what Sri Yukteswar said when he said, if you're breathing the free air of earth, you have a responsibility to give back. That's true too. He was talking about seva and giving, and very important. But Master said, if I've come and found you, listen, pay attention, do your best, show up here, because there are so few of us. We are right at the, I was saying this last night. Of course, I'm not thinking about that. Like I said it last night, and let me say it again, about Ananda, Australia, when I was saying, remember, it's no different than what happened with Ananda Village or Ananda Palo Alto or Ananda anywhere. It takes a village to start a community. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of input and a lot of showing up. And that's how a community gets made. I don't mean a living community. I mean a community of souls that are gathering their forces, and this is important in the quote-unquote new age. The new age is an age of energy. We don't even need to live near each other. It's nice if we do, to be honest. I forget who, I think I was talking to Ashwin today when I was saying, it's just more difficult when you can't come together a few times a week and just be with each other and feel each other's energy. And even if you don't feel like going one night, like, do I want to go to Raja Yoga? I'm not teaching. I don't really need to be there. Shanti, if you go, you're going to bring a lot of energy. Even if you don't say a word, you schmooze with people over dinner because we do a potluck. You are with them, you're exchanging energy. You go, you sit in the class. Literally, this is meaningful. You sit straight up. You open your chest. You keep your eyes open. You're attentive with the speaker. This is energy. These things are not usual in the world. When I went to nursing school before I was a doctor, I was a nurse. And it's another whole trip. But I was in a Catholic 3-year nursing school program. They don't exist in the US anymore, but they did then. In other words, not college. It has nothing to do with university. But one of my teachers was a man whose name was Rabbi Twersky. I'm not sure if he's alive or not. He was an Orthodox rabbi. He was a rabbi, an MD, psychiatrist, had a PhD in history and a few other things. I loved this man. We would walk in, they always put him to teach us after lunch. And because everybody falls asleep after lunch, right? It was just, and he'd be up there, and he would start the class and say, look, if you're tired, you can go to sleep. Go ahead, go to sleep. Well, he would speak to us like that. Who was going to sleep after that? You were already in love with the man, you couldn't wait. It was energy. That man shared such beautiful energy. This is true. They tried to, I went into nursing and I loved nursing and I had a beautiful career with it till I decided to go back to medical school. But at one point, Miss Daly. This was a lot of years ago, guys, but I remember her. Miss Daly, who taught us how to make a bed for 4 weeks, taught us only how to make a bed for 4 weeks. Nowadays, we would say she needed to get a life, right? But anyway, that's what she did. She decided that my way of thinking about people and how I wanted to relate to them and be with them, this is true, was she thought I was crazy. So what does she do? She did. She said, we can't contain her. And so they get Rabbi Twersky to interview me. And he and I have such a great time. He says to me, I want to meet with you at least once a month. And he has to go back to Miss Daly and say, she's not crazy. I was a kid. You know, I was 17, 18, 19. I was graduated from nursing school before I was 20. But he told her, listen to her. It's just interesting, you know. I mean, he was so unique in his time, but he knew. He was one of the pioneers of the age of energy. But there are not many of us. We absolutely have that responsibility. So as often as I can, I go to Raja Yoga or other classes, whether I'm teaching or not. I don't make it to all of them, of course. But I know, and this is not an egoic thing, every one of you can know it too. I know if I walk into that class, there's more energy there. There just is. Everybody's uplifted and happy, but every one of us could do that. This is not my ego speaking. In fact, definitively not my ego. It's the opposite of ego. It's saying exactly what Master came to teach us. Master came for several reasons, but and he came at the time he came for several reasons. But the biggest one that underlies everything, and we could talk about with any of what he did, was to move us from that age that, poor Jesus, I always think about Jesus, he had to teach right at the bottom of that circle of the yugas, right dead at the bottom, and he has to come and try and share these teachings. That was an impossible job. I mean, it was so hard what he was given to do because so few had ears to hear. It was the depth of Kali Yuga. Master always said he had it hard because he had to live through 2 world wars and other things he talked about, but there were more people who could hear him. And here we are. Now, in the whole world, it's not a lot of souls that are following these teachings, and we all know how hard it is to create community, to even when people love the teachings, to help them feel inspired to come, to be present, to be hungry and thirsty for this knowledge. This is spirituality in the New Age. It's called let go of all of the past, all of what we thought religion was. The other reason Master came was to show us again in a whole new language what Jesus was saying. And that was one of the greatest things that he accomplished. I don't know how many of you have been able to read. I have not read it, but I've read the first 200 pages about 8 times. The Second Coming of Christ. It's huge. It's a big 2-volume set. But it is so, it's like Jesus and Master are writing it together. That's what it feels like, and they are, of course, they did. But you feel that when you read it. Everything that Jesus was trying to say to those very few who could hear him, then Master came, and you can feel there's not a whole lot of us, but there's more. There's more than what Jesus was up against. Nobody put Master up on the cross and put nails through his arms and feet. I mean, think of it. Pretty awful what happened to Jesus. So Master came at a time where he could say, this is what's happening now, and I'm going to awaken a few souls. I'm going to remind you who you are, not unlike, and we'll talk more about this tomorrow, but that beautiful scene when Babaji calls Lahiri up the mountain. And, imagine, I don't know how many of you have been to Babaji's cave, but think about it. Lahiri's just roaming around in the dark in the Himalaya, and suddenly he says, I hear somebody calling my name, and he follows it. This is a real story. You go to that spot, and you stand there, and the Golden Palace was right there. It's mind-blowing. In the best way, it is. You've been there, because you're shaking your head. You just can't imagine. And I know Nara was just there, and probably a few others. But there you are. But he goes up there, and Babaji's saying to him, Lahiri, do you remember anything here? Lahiri's saying, no, I don't remember anything. Are you sure? Nothing looks familiar? No, it doesn't look familiar. And then what does Babaji do? He just taps him like that. And suddenly, Lahiri is flooded with memories. Now, Babaji probably won't appear in this room, though let's not rule it out, because he could. But we're here, and we're reminded, and we're looking at this extraordinary altar that was put together so we could be reminded that we too are being reawakened. That's what's happening. That's what we're doing here now. And we should not take ourselves less seriously than that. I don't care what your role is. I don't care if you're about to have 5 children that you have to pay attention to, or if your work is so busy. Ashwin and I were talking today. I was telling him, because, I don't know how many of you know him, but he's partnered and he has 2 little children and he works full time and he's developing this practice. That's a big life. A 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, they always need you. And you can't say, I'll get back to you later. It's your dharma, they're your kids. It's a big thing. And I was telling him, I had a huge medical practice in the United States, huge. And I mean, one of the biggest in the country. It's a lot. And then I was on this path because, remember, Master picked me up and put me into medical school. So from the beginning of all of the medicine, going through an internship, I don't know what it's like in Australia, Nara can tell me. It's very hard in the US, very hard. You work a minimum work of 120, 130 hours a week. That's a lot. So going through all this, but always here, Master saying, I just came to get you. What are you going to do? Here's Ananda. It's coming right to you in Palo Alto. Here it is. We don't ignore those calls. We can't. We are, I don't know what to say. In a way, I was going to say the chosen few, but I don't mean that in any derogatory way. Remember, I left my whole religion because they tried to tell me we were chosen. But we've been found. We have been found, and we have had the great blessing of this master, an avatar. And then not only that, but he gives us Swamiji. You know what Swamiji said to us? He looked out at a room one night. I was there, up at the village. He goes like this. He looks just like this, long time. There wasn't a room, it was an outdoor, what's it called? It was an outdoor auditorium. Yeah, there were a lot of us. He goes like this, he goes, not one of you could have made it with Master. That's what he said. He did, not one of you. He said, Master didn't explain anything. He didn't explain it. He wanted us to become so intuitive that we knew without the words. And Swamiji said, he said, I'm spoon feeding you. And he was, excuse me. He just broke it all down for us. Look how easy it is for us to read his books. You take one of his songs, anyone, almost anyone. Maybe there's a couple that are playful. They're kids' songs, but they're still filled with truth. They are filled with truth. You can take a line and repeat it over and over and over. I often say this with Home is a Green Hill, right? Let me see if I can get there. Can one of you help me with the whole last phrase of the Home is a Green Hill? But I knew in a moment the deeds that men do. Oh, the hill that was star. Never die. The deeds that men do never die. Each victory is true. Every effort you spend brings more life in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new. Now just think about that. I knew in a moment the deeds that men do never die. Each victory is true. He's saying, life after life after life. I could go on and interpret it. It doesn't matter. You can interpret it. It's 2 lines of a song. You could meditate on it for a very long time. So we are being handed these extraordinary teachings that say to us, that spell it out, how to live this life. One of the other very big things that Master brought, it's all about this energy, is, and somebody alluded to it yesterday, I forget who it was, who said, I now have discipleship. Yeah. Amutra, yeah, I'm sorry. I could just flashed her name up here for a moment. She said that, and I thought, that's extraordinarily, I want to say insightful, but it's deeper than that. To really acknowledge the gift of discipleship, because think of what came before us. I know what it was in Judaism. I've learned a lot about Christianity since I came onto this path. It was never that God was within. It was never that we all have within us the ability to communicate so directly and immediately with the divine. It was always, if you're good enough and if you're lucky, you'll go to heaven, wherever that is. And if you're not, you're just going straight to hell. What does that mean? It's sort of, that story that Master told about these are just coming to me, so I have to rethink it. There was a man who was very worried that God would be angry with him if he did something. I don't remember the story. So Master said to him, do you have a son? And this man said, yeah. And Master said, isn't he very difficult at times? And he doesn't listen. Oh yeah, the man said, he's so difficult. Master said, do you have an oven? Guy goes, yes. Do you remember? Yeah. Here's what you need to do. He said, tie him up. And the man is looking, true story. Man's looking more and more and more aghast. And then he says, and turn the oven up really high. And then put him in the oven and close the door. And the man's furious with Master. I would never do that. Never do that. And Master said, do you think God would treat his son any differently than you would treat your own? I mean, it's just, just sharing constantly our relationship with God. God as Father, God as the divine mother. Something else he brought, that feminine quality that we can all, at best, forget an individual story, but at best, we think of mothers as being this safe, loving. We think of that feminine quality, certainly, no matter where it comes from. So really helping us develop such a close relationship with God that we're one. We are one with God. It's beyond closeness, though our human mind can't grasp it, because it's not like I feel so close to you, I just want to hold you near. No, it's that I feel that divine love at all times. If I get quiet enough, still enough, inward enough, calm, if I can calm my heart enough, I will feel God within. That is the goal of the whole spiritual path. That is spirituality in this age. One of the great gifts that Master brought us. We're not separate from God. We're not having to try and perform for God. We already have all of that. Now, I can say this to you because if you're not already Kriya bonds, you are at least well on your way. Some of you tomorrow, some of you a few months, doesn't matter. I mean, everybody's here because they care about they care about this path. They want to go deeper on this path. They want to come to know, not understand, but to really know these teachings. This is all spirituality in the New Age. You know, I used to sit around, well, I can tell you, even in Israel, when you go to the, I forget the name of the place where King David's body is, but King David was a huge figure in Judaism. He helped build the second temple, and I mean, just a huge, I think that's accurate, maybe he even helped build the first temple. But he was and is very important. You go into that temple, and there's many things I could say about it, the building. I had a profound experience in there with David, with David's soul. I just did. I had a profound experience. Later, Asha told me, Swamiji said, that was a real thing in Israel. That was one of the, I wasn't surprised because I could tell. But when you walk in there, there's all of these little rooms and open doors you can look in. And there's all of these rabbis, these Orthodox Jews, and they're just sitting around studying and debating. That's what they do. They study and debate, and then they come into the synagogue and they want to tell you what they think. I mean, God bless them, they're trying, but why is what they think any more meaningful than what any of you think if you've studied something? But when we're learning that the way to God is by having a direct experience, a direct inner experience of the divine, this is what we've been given. I'm trying to go through all of these aspects. I'm sure I won't cover it all. Fortunately, I get to say more tomorrow and more the next day. So maybe I'll get to say, because it's all important. I mean, we are living in the New Age. Swamiji started writing about this. It was one of his earlier books. I forget what it was called. Not Spirituality in the New Age, was it? Is that? Religion in the New Age. Yeah, that's exactly right. One of his earlier books. Trying to say, we're here. It's now. We've been given these teachings. This great master came, and he was so accessible, so utterly accessible. You all should come on pilgrimage to the U.S. Really. You know why? Because we can all go down to Encinitas, and you sit at Master's feet in Forest Lawn. Even though he did look at Diamond and say, I'm not in there, but he meant his old body, right? His dead body that was laying there. Everybody was crying. And he was like, tell them to quit crying, I'm not in there. He told her that. But, I mean, he literally said that to her after he died. But when you're sitting there with that crypt and you're at his feet, right? Several at least have been there. You're with him. You are right with him. And you feel the unbelievable gift that we've been given of knowing all of this, become more intuitive, get quiet. I started to say before about Kriya Yoga, and I got sidetracked. But this is what Kriya Yoga is. When we think about why Master came, ushering in this New Age, trying to help us feel God inside, really talking about God constantly as Divine Mother, so that we could open our hearts more easily. Because at the center of our hearts, not our anatomical heart, but our heart chakra, right where we try and go with meditation and with Kriya, right inside to get there, to get to that one place that one and only place where we can know God. There's no other way to do it. It's all in the heart. This is why Master said, when I am gone, only love can take my place. I pondered that for a long time. That is not immediately understandable, because it's not understandable to the human mind, but it is understandable to the heart. Remember from the AY, when Master says he was having this experience of cosmic consciousness, and he said, I perceived the very center of the Empyrean as a point of intuitive perception in my own heart. He was saying, you go right to your very center. Do whatever you have to do to get right to the very innermost part of your being energetically. The astral spine, chakras, they're not you can't find them in an X-ray. It's not about this physical world. It's about redefining energy. It's about changing energy. When I used to teach beginning meditation, I used to say all the time, I don't get to say it much, so I'm very happy to be able to say it right this moment, that it's one of the first physical law of the universe. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can always be transformed. Always. That means everything that we think of in this world, every thought, never mind thing, thought, feeling, emotion, it can be transformed. That is the most promising thing in the whole universe. We're not stuck anywhere. We never have to stay anywhere. And Master came to tell us that. He said, wake up. You're in a new age. You now have the ability, if you listen, if you practice, if you care, to find that point of intuitive perception in your own heart. He didn't mean his own heart, like that's the only place it is. He meant center everywhere, circumference nowhere. So whichever one of us gets there, we'll find him right there too, because he's at the point of intuitive perception of that. We're at the point of intuitive perception. We would have the absolute knowing of what it means. Another very confusing phrase when we say we're all one. We're not separate. There's an illusion. What did Einstein say about that? The illusion of separateness is an optical delusion of the mind. That's what he said. I mean, there's nothing, we're not separate. But go try and tell your mind that. There's Normilla, there's this one, we look pretty darn separate. But not if we find that point of intuitive perception. And when you meditate deeply enough, and I'll bet at least many of you know this, you begin to see, wow, that is accessible. We're not living there, none of us, or we wouldn't be here, but we can touch it. We can feel a love beyond anything we've ever known in this world, or will ever know. Human love is great. I was listening to Ashwin, and I talked to Urmila a lot about his little 5.5-year-old daughter. I didn't say it out loud, but the thought went through my head, God, I'll bet he just loves her so much. Precious little 5-year-old, she's very vivacious, he was telling me. You just want to eat them up. That's how I feel about Max, my 2.5-year-old puppy. I can imagine how you would feel about, really, I do. He's just like walked into my heart. And I'm thinking about your daughter or your little son, or, you just, and it's nothing compared to universal true love. Does anybody have any comments or questions or?
When Swamiji said that Master was the avatar of Dwapara Yuga, could you share more about what does that mean for all of us being connected to that?
Yeah, well, I think I've been trying to say that. Obviously, I didn't get close enough, but Master is the avatar to usher in this age of energy to come to us to say everything's energy. He came in right at the same time that all of the physicists started saying to the whole world, everything's energy. Nobody thought that before. That's not what we felt. So the scientists were coming in and saying exactly what he was saying to a different audience. He was saying everything is energy, which can always be transformed. Don't think you're stuck with anything. I'm here to show you. You will, we're a little early. We all just came in a little early because we're still working our way out of Kali Yuga, actually, seriously. It's part, Devarshi talks about it, but we've all been talking about it anyway, though he describes it beautifully. Because we think, oh, it's Dwapara Yuga, energy, we're not stuck in form and it should be so wonderful. Although it's the very beginning of, a 12,000 year cycle, this ascending Dwapara. But what everybody is saying, and it makes perfect sense to me, is the Kali Yuga is here. I'm saying here because the circle goes like this. Well, actually, it's over here, ascending. Trying really to hold on for its life, literally. And of course, we know the end of the story, which is the good news. It doesn't have a chance. But it doesn't know that. And it's trying to hold on. And here comes this new age, all of this new energy, all of these discoveries, all of the realization that everything is actually formless, that everything is one, that everything comes from the same source, that we don't have to think in a dual way, good, bad, right, wrong, up, down, love, hate, just goes on and on, that we can actually come together here in a place of perfect calmness, perfect peace. The scientists are saying it, and Master's saying it, and he came in with this amazing ability. Oh, I know, I didn't finish that thought though. All of that negative, dark energy of Kali Yuga is being almost, what is the word? Devarshi uses the word enlivened. It's a very good word, but it's being energized because Dwapara is coming in and it's saying, here I am, and I got all this energy, but here's all this darkness of people who are filled with hate. And what would have been a little irritation before becomes rage because it's filled with energy. And it's so, you can just see it. And I think, my God, that's what's happening. This is why I say we all came a little early. If we had come about 1,000 years from now, maybe we'll come back then. Though I'm hoping to not come back till we're at the top of the circle. I don't want to come back for the rest of Dwapara. But we wouldn't be living through this transition that is so impossible. Everywhere you look, just about, there's so much difficult stuff going on. But Master came and spoke a language and found those great teachers, his disciples, who could then say to all of us, and then we get to say to all of the next group, and it's just going to go like that. This is an ever-expanding circle of true joy that we're a part of. It really is. I mean, it feels small now, but I have to say, this is why we all need to show up. It's more difficult for all of you. I realize you actually have to drive 3 hours or 6 or get on a plane, but really, what else are you going to do with your life? What else is there that matters? I mean, we flew 15 and a half hours to get here, and it was expensive, and it's all those worldly things that if you wanted to say, I can't do this, Australia, but no, it's not like that. And I was just thinking this morning, we have to keep coming back. We have to support, I don't mean we, just necessarily the 5 of us, but to help here, everybody, Nara and Kalamali and what they're doing, holding so much. All of you need. Master said it's your responsibility. Step in and help. And those of us who can, are able, we need to get on a plane again when it's time. A year from now or whenever, come back again and we all come together again and bring a friend And we do this again. And I'm not actually kidding. It's so important. It's so important. Master took a body and he suffered. Have any of you read the book that was written by the lawyer?
Oh,
Fight for Religious Freedom. That book is amazing. And it taught all of us more about Master than we had known. It was incredible. He found written words and stories and stuff. We just didn't know it. And it's so amazing. And you think, he suffered so much, Master. It's not what he talked about, but he was betrayed, he was threatened, so much happened. And if we think of what Swamiji lived through in his life, my God, besides all of the physical stuff, Swami Kriyananda was slandered in one of the most highly regarded, respected areas of our country, across newspapers, lies told. He never lost his state of inner peace and calm. Never. Now there's a lesson. If somebody says one bad word to me, I'm like, oh my God, was I too mean? Did I say something? I go through all of this. It's something like this. Swami Kriyananda was brutalized. These great souls came for us. This is so important. If we could love each other, even the smallest bit of that, it would be amazing. So he brought us to this precipice of true spiritual freedom. Yeah, it's actually a very good question. What does that mean? We are biased. Believe it or not, this is another, I have really yelled at God about this. I forget the numbers now. I forget the number, but we have way more negative thoughts. Our brains are conditioned, and I don't know the numbers, but it's phenomenal, than we have positive thoughts. I used to know them when I used to present this stuff more scientifically, like with slides and everything, to try and show the benefit of meditation, which is actually now being scientifically proven in so many ways. So yes, that's terrible that God did that to us. That's what I think, just terrible. But I think the answer to that, Monica, truly is what we call the spiritual path, because it is very hard to get out of our mind, extremely hard. Never mind that the mind is even conditioned negatively, even just that we're thinking all the time. It's so tiresome, and it takes us in such the wrong direction, and it's very, very difficult. And the problem is just what you said. Thoughts are things. Thoughts very quickly become materialized into something, an action, a word, a behavior. Master, this is adorable actually, and again, these are stories that I've read before and I don't have it right now. He said, these, again, Master's words, he says, it's really lovely to think about all these energetic particles, protons, electrons, neutrons, just floating around out there, and we're all part of it. And it feels, and you can just hear him, he's like dancing. It's so lovely. He said, and then when all of those particles form into a human being who's now telling you that you're awful or that you've made a mistake, he said, suddenly, same exact particles, but you don't feel so loving about it. And it's really true. We have this delusion of form, but we're stuck in it. So, and it's very hard. We can't try to quit thinking. It will not work because we can't, because the mind's already doing its job and it's doing it very well. So if we think about things, forget it, we already lost the battle. This is why Jyotish tells us all the time, he said it many times, he's quoting Swamiji, your master, but he says it, the minute to stop a negative thought or a negative behavior or a compulsive behavior that you don't want to be doing, but we all know our mind gets into toying with it. It's like foreplay. Let's be honest. Once you're into foreplay, you've lost the game. You can't, stop then. I mean, it's just true. It's a perfect image, so we have to use it. So that's what we do. Gee, do I want to have that drink right now? You know, I really shouldn't have the drink. But just one drink, is it really going to ruin my meditation? Goes like that. No, you're gone. But if you say, I'd like a drink, nope, and you just start chanting, the instant you can catch the thought, if you're sincere, this is why programs for drug addiction and everything can work when people are serious about wanting to quit the behavior. This is why meditation works, when we're serious about wanting to do it. Because who of us has a simple time sitting down and meditating for 2 hours? You know, there's a million reasons not to. But if it never comes up as a question, we don't debate every single morning, am I going to brush my teeth this morning? I really don't have to go all the way into the bathroom. I don't know. We don't do that. Most of us, I'm going to say, I hope, we get up and we just go and we brush our teeth. That's what we do in the morning.
Coffee.
Hmm?
They drink coffee.
Drink coffee. Now, or whatever but the point is, coffee's not exactly the same kind of an example because I don't want to get sidetracked, but it's a different kind of a behavior. But certain things we don't think about, we just do them. And we have to get to that place where we turn off the mind before it gets the best of us. Because otherwise, we're powerless. That's why we've been back millions of times. We're powerless over the mind. But we're not powerless if we grab a hold of this energy, if we really open up our third chakra and we say, I am going for this now. Maybe it's 30 minutes of meditation. Maybe it can be a million things. It doesn't have to be huge. What is your next step? Because it's energy and it can be transformed. And that really is the truth. And when that starts happening, everything about us is transformed. We look better. People come to me after a beginning meditation class. This is true. They come up to me, they say, everybody's telling me, did you change something? Like, did you get a haircut or get new glasses? And they say, nothing has changed about me. But everything's changed about them. It's just people can't read energy. This practice that we've been given is, well, it's the greatest gift in the world. And it's on our way to freedom. And it works. But it's like the end of AA meetings. I don't know if you have, do you have AA here? You do, yeah. So the end of their meetings, I fortunately have not had this problem in this life, but I've worked with a lot of addicts and alcoholics. The last line of every one of their meetings, they're holding hands and they say, it works if you work it, meaning their program. The same for us. If we meditate, it works. The more we meditate, the more we want to meditate. So.